On the morning of March 4th, 1908, 9-year-old Niles Thompson slipped out of a second-story window at Lakeview Elementary School in Collinwood, Ohio, and landed hard on the frozen ground below. His coat was singed, and his hands were blackened with soot. Behind him, smoke billowed from the brick building in thick, choking clouds. Around him, nearly 200 children stood in the schoolyard, their faces white with shock, watching their school burn. But as Niles frantically scanned the crowd of survivors, searching face after face, his stomach dropped, because his little brother Thomas wasn't among them. But before we get into today's story, if you love detailed deep dives into historical disasters and tragic events that changed everything, then this channel is perfect for you. Because that's exactly what we specialize in, and I post new stories 3 to 4 times every week. So if that interests you, gently tap the like button and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. All right, let's get into today's story, which takes place in Collinwood, Ohio on Ash Wednesday, March 4th, 1908. Collinwood was a booming railroad town just 10 miles outside Cleveland. By 1908, it had transformed from a quiet village into a thriving community of about 8,000 people, most of them immigrants from Italy, Ireland, and Slovenia, who'd come seeking jobs with the railroad companies. The town had grown so fast that in 1901, they'd built a second elementary school on Collimer Street to handle the overflow of children. They called it Lakeview Elementary, and by early 1908, it housed 366 students, taught by 9 teachers. The building was 4 stories tall with a brick exterior that gave it an imposing, solid appearance. But here's the thing you need to understand about Lakeview Elementary. While the outside was brick, the inside was almost entirely wood. Wooden floors, wooden beams, wooden staircases, wooden joists. The floors were regularly treated with oil to keep them shiny and clean, which was standard practice at the time. The building had 3 exits, 2 ground-level doors facing east and west, and a fire escape snaking down the north side. During the 3 fire drills they conducted each year, students were trained to use the east exit as their primary escape route. The fire escape wasn't part of the drill. March 4th started like any other school day. Classes began at 8:45 in the morning. Children hung their coats on hooks, settled into their desks, and opened their textbooks. The 9 teachers, all unmarried women in their 20s, began their lessons. 5th grader Emma Neibert was sitting in her classroom on the 3rd floor when, around 9:15, she needed to use the restroom. She left her classroom and headed down to the basement level where the facilities were located. As she descended the stairs, she noticed something odd. Thin wisps of smoke were seeping through the gaps in the main staircase near the front entrance. She also saw smoke coming from a storage closet tucked beneath the front stairs. Emma immediately found the school janitor, Fritz Herder, a father of 8 who'd worked at the school for years. Herder took one look at the smoke and understood the situation was serious. He burst into the nearest first-floor classroom, where teacher Ruby Irwin was conducting her lesson, and rang the manual fire bell 3 times. Then he ran to open the doors at both the east and west exits. Keep that detail about Fritz Herder in mind. It becomes important later. The students, hearing the bell, assumed it was another fire drill. They'd practiced this before. Stay calm, put on your coats and hats, line up in an orderly fashion, and walk to the exits. The teachers maintained control as best they could, shepherding children toward the doors. Ethel Rose, who taught kindergarten on the 1st floor, managed to evacuate all of her young students through the front door before smoke and flames blocked the passage. She got them out just in time. But here's where things went catastrophically wrong. The fire had started in that basement closet, right beneath the main staircase at the front of the building. Within minutes, flames engulfed the wooden stairs, cutting off the primary exit route that hundreds of children had been trained to use during fire drills. The heat was so intense that the wooden beams supporting the stairs began to collapse. Meanwhile, on the upper floors, teachers were still trying to maintain order as smoke began filling the hallways. 9-year-old Niles Thompson and his younger brother Thomas were somewhere in that building with hundreds of other children, all heading toward exits that were rapidly becoming death traps. Here's what made this fire spread so fast. Remember that brick exterior? During the fire, it acted like a chimney. The brick walls funneled heat and flames upward through the building at terrifying speed. The wooden interior, those oiled floors, the exposed wooden joists next to the heating pipes, it all burned like kindling. Open stairwells with no fire breaks allowed the flames to race from floor to floor. Within minutes, the entire interior was engulfed. And here's where it gets worse. The volunteer fire department in Collinwood consisted of just 20 men with one horse-drawn gas-powered pumper, one hose wagon, and a small ladder truck. On the morning of March 4th, the department's only team of horses was over a mile away, pulling a road scraper to grade a dirt road. When the alarm came in, firefighters had to run through the fields to gather the horses, hitch them to the equipment, and race back to the school. The delay was devastating. Outside the burning school, parents who'd heard the alarm began arriving. They watched in horror as their children appeared in windows, screaming for help. Some children jumped from second- and third-story windows, breaking bones but surviving. Others were too afraid to jump. Police Chief McElrath's son, Hugh, was inside the building. He managed to lead a group of small children down the fire escape to safety, but when the youngest ones were too frightened to jump the final distance to the ground, they turned and ran back inside the building. Hugh McElrath went after them, trying to save them. He never came out. Niles Thompson had escaped by jumping from a window. His clothes were smoking and his hands were burned, but he was alive. He immediately began searching the crowd of survivors for his brother Thomas. When he couldn't find him among the children in the schoolyard, he made a decision. He turned and ran back toward the burning building. By the time the Collinwood firefighters arrived with their equipment, they faced an impossible situation. Their ladders weren't tall enough to reach the second-story windows where children were trapped. Their hoses were old and leaky, losing pressure before the water could reach the flames. And in their rush, they'd forgotten to bring their axe, which meant they couldn't break down the back entrance where witnesses could hear children screaming and pounding on the doors from inside. The Cleveland Fire Department received word about the fire at 10:16 in the morning. They arrived by 10:50 with 3 additional vehicles and properly functioning equipment. But by then, it was too late. The interior of Lakeview Elementary had collapsed into the basement. All that remained were 4 blackened brick walls surrounding a smoking pile of debris. In less than an hour, 172 children, 2 teachers, and 1 rescuer had died. Nearly half of all the students in the building. Niles Thompson and his brother Thomas were among the dead. Both boys perished inside that school. The scene that confronted parents and rescue workers was nightmarish. Small bodies had to be pulled from the wreckage and lined up in rows. Parents walked along the lines, searching for their children among the dead. Some families lost multiple children in a single morning. 19 of the victims were burned so badly they couldn't be identified at all. They were buried together in a mass grave at Lakeview Cemetery, each with a numbered marker corresponding to whatever personal effects, a ring or piece of fabric, had been found with them. The coroner's inquest moved quickly, perhaps too quickly for the grieving community. They concluded that overheated steam pipes running next to exposed wooden joists had heated the wood to its kindling temperature, causing ignition. But many parents weren't satisfied with this explanation. Rumors spread. Some newspapers blamed janitor Fritz Herder, suggesting he'd run the boiler too hot or been inattentive. Other theories claimed girls had been smoking in that basement closet near flammable materials. The actual cause was never determined with absolute certainty. One persistent myth claimed the children died because the exit doors opened inward, trapping them as panic-stricken students pressed against the doors from behind. But the coroner's examination proved this false. The outer doors did open outward, as required by law. The real problem was a narrow vestibule with interior doors that were smaller than the outer doors. When hundreds of terrified children rushed toward the exit simultaneously, they became wedged in that narrow bottleneck on the stairs. The crush of bodies created an impenetrable mass that no one could escape. The community of Collinwood was shattered. In a town of 8,000 people, losing 175 lives in a single morning, most of them children, created wounds that would never fully heal. But something else happened too. The sheer scale of the tragedy sparked national outrage and immediate action. Within weeks, school inspections were ordered across the entire country. New laws were passed mandating enclosed stairwells, fire-resistant materials, wider exits, panic bars on doors instead of doorknob latches, and regular fire drills that included all exits, not just the primary one. In 1910, a new school called Memorial Elementary was built on property adjacent to the site of the fire. It was constructed to the highest fire safety standards of the time, with fireproof materials, multiple exits, and iron staircases. The land where Lakeview Elementary once stood was purchased by the state and converted into a memorial garden designed by Louise Klein Miller. Beautiful flowers still bloom there today. The Collinwood school fire remains the deadliest school fire in American history. Whether better building codes, a properly equipped fire department, or different architectural choices could have saved those children, we'll never know for certain. But what's undeniable is that 175 people, including 9-year-old Niles Thompson, who ran back inside to save his brother, lost their lives on Ash Wednesday in 1908. If this story fascinated you, I've got another devastating historical disaster you need to see. Click the video on your screen right now about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire that changed labor laws forever. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories like this. Thanks for watching. Until next time, see ya.